The observation deck of Lunar Command Base Alpha was a cathedral of shattered hope. Holographic displays flickered with the ghosts of lost colonies, each pinpoint of light representing millions of lives extinguished in the Karathi genocide. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood motionless, her prosthetic left arm, a testament to survival, casting a faint metallic reflection against the curved transparent aluminum viewport. 3 years had passed since the fall of New Jakarta, but the memory burned like a fresh wound. Her fingers traced the thin scar that ran from her temple to her jawline, a permanent reminder of the day she'd watched an entire civilization get erased in less than a standard rotation. The Karathi didn't just conquer, they consumed, leaving nothing but sterilized planetary husks and quantum-encrypted data archives that mocked humanity's existence. "We're down to 2.3 billion humans," a voice behind her said. Dr. Imani Okoro, chief strategist of the Remnant Council, approached with measured steps. Her dark skin was etched with the kind of weariness that came from witnessing systematic extinction. Where Rodriguez was raw emotion barely contained by military discipline, Okoro represented calculated survival, a quantum physicist who had spent her entire career studying the impossible. "The last census was completed 3 weeks ago," Okoro continued. "Every major population center is now concentrated in protected zones: Mars, the lunar bases, and the deep space habitation rings. We've become nothing more than a species in preservation mode." Rodriguez turned, her cybernetic eye, a piece of reverse-engineered Karathi technology, scanning Okoro with multiple spectral analyses. "Preservation isn't survival. It's just a slower form of death." The room itself was a marvel of desperate engineering. Quantum-shielded walls could withstand direct bombardment from multiple weapon systems. Holographic interfaces danced with streams of data, casualty reports, resource allocations, strategic simulations that grew increasingly bleak with each passing hour. A young technician approached, datapad trembling slightly in his hand. "Ma'am, we've completed the initial simulations for Project Nemesis. The preliminary results are, well, they're unprecedented." Dr. Okoro's eyes narrowed. Project Nemesis wasn't just a weapon or a ship. It was humanity's final algorithm, a technological Hail Mary that defied every known principle of physics, engineering, and warfare. "Show me," Rodriguez commanded. The holographic display erupted with complexity. Quantum entanglement matrices intertwined with bioadaptive neural networks. Gravitational manipulation algorithms danced alongside metamaterial schematics that could potentially bend the very fabric of space-time. This wasn't just advanced technology. This was a fundamental reimagining of what technology could be. "We've integrated captured Karathi quantum processors with human neural interface designs," the technician explained, his voice a mixture of terror and excitement. "The core system can process tactical scenarios faster than entire Karathi war councils. But there's a catch." Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. There was always a catch. "The neural load required to run this system, it's not compatible with standard human consciousness. We'll need someone who's already been augmented, someone who's survived direct Karathi encounters, someone who understands their psychology as much as their technology." The unspoken implication hung in the air. They were looking at her. Okoro stepped forward, her voice clinical yet charged with an underlying desperation. "The Nemesis isn't just a weapon, Elena. It's our species' quantum suicide note, a final declaration that if we're going to die, we're taking our executioners with us." Rodriguez stared at the holographic representation. Layers of quantum probability cascaded around her, mathematical possibilities that looked more like living art than strategic projections. Somewhere in this complex dance of data and potential, humanity's last hope was taking shape. "How certain are the survival projections?" she asked. The technician's response was brutally honest. "Statistically, we have a 0.73% chance of success, but that's still better than the 0% we had yesterday." A bitter laugh escaped Rodriguez's lips. It wasn't hope. It wasn't even close to hope. But in the vast, cold mathematics of survival, 0.73% was infinitely better than nothing. "Prepare the primary neural interfaces," she said, "and get me everything we know about Karathi quantum communication protocols. If we're going to build a ghost, we might as well learn to haunt them properly." The Karathi world ship Varkax hung like a crystalline nightmare against the backdrop of the Omega Centauri cluster. Its biomechanical architecture defied human understanding. A living construct that was simultaneously a vessel, a weapon, and a collective consciousness. Commander Zirin, a ninth-generation warform, moved through its organic corridors with a predatory grace that belied the complex societal structures of their civilization. Contrary to human perception, the Karathi were not simple conquerors. They were architects of galactic evolution, a species that had elevated biological optimization to an art form spanning millennia. Each Karathi was a carefully cultivated organism, their genetic lineage meticulously engineered across generations to serve specific functions within their vast, interconnected society. Deep within the ship's neural core, ancient memory streams flowed like rivers of liquid knowledge. The current generation carried the genetic memories of their ancestors, not just as information, but as lived experiences that shaped their very consciousness. Zirin could recall the neural imprints of battles fought centuries before their birth, each memory as vivid as the moment it was created. A subtle vibration rippled through the ship's biomechanical structure. The collective, the shared consciousness that bound all Karathi, was agitated. Something was wrong. Anomaly detected in Sector 7 Gamma. A disembodied voice echoed through the neural pathways. It wasn't a voice in the human sense, but a complex quantum communication that simultaneously conveyed emotion, mathematical precision, and sensory input. Zirin's secondary neural cluster activated, processing the information with millisecond precision. Sensor ghosts, quantum echoes, impossible spatial distortions that shouldn't exist within known physical parameters. The humans were becoming something unexpected. In the vast archives of Karathi historical records, civilizations were categorized like biological specimens. Most species followed predictable patterns of development, expansion, and eventual extinction. Humans were different. Chaotic, unpredictable. They adapted with a speed and creativity that defied standard evolutionary models. A holographic representation materialized, a three-dimensional map of known space, with human-controlled territories marked in a pulsing, adaptive red. Each point was not just a location, but a complex network of potential. The collective had been tracking human technological progression for decades, and the rate of their adaptation was accelerating exponentially. "The quantum signature is increasing," another neural stream reported. "Probability matrices suggest a fundamental shift in their technological capabilities." Zirin's primary consciousness merged with the ship's tactical systems. Memories of previous encounters with human resistance flooded their neural pathways. Isolated colonies that had developed unexpected defensive mechanisms. Technological adaptations cobbled together from salvaged equipment. Tactical responses that emerged from pure desperation. The humans were not just fighting. They were evolving. Deep in the ship's genetic archives, a classified memory stream activated. It was a record rarely accessed, the first encounters with humanity, before the systematic colonization began. Something in those initial contact reports had always felt unusual. A note of caution buried within the conquest algorithms. Preliminary analysis suggests potential existential threat, the neural network concluded. But there was something else, a note of something almost approaching respect. Zirin understood what the collective was beginning to realize. This was no longer about conquest. This was about survival. The ship's outer membrane began to reconfigure, adaptive biotechnology responding to quantum-level threat assessments that human sensors couldn't even comprehend. Weapon systems that could deconstruct matter at the molecular level prepared themselves. Quantum entanglement drives spun up, ready to execute complex evasive maneuvers. But beneath the layers of technological superiority, something else stirred. A memory. A warning. There was something else out there. something that made the humans look like mere children, something that had been the true reason behind the Kirathi's relentless expansion. A threat so profound that entire civilizations had been consumed in its wake. And now, humanity was getting too close to understanding. Zarin's final thought before merging completely with the ship's consciousness was both a tactical assessment and something remarkably close to anticipation. The game was changing. And no one, not the Kirathi, not the humans, truly understood the rules anymore. The Quantum Forge looked nothing like a traditional research facility. Buried 3 kilometers beneath the radiation-shielded mountains of New Patagonia, it was a cathedral of impossible engineering, a place where the boundaries between technology, biology, and pure mathematics ceased to exist. Dr. Marcus Chen hadn't slept in 72 days. Not real sleep anyway. Neurological interface patches kept his consciousness hovering between waking and a state of quantum-enhanced awareness. His body was more machine than human now, a living computational system that processed information faster than entire research teams could conceptualize problems. Structural integrity at 62%, whispered AI, the emergent AI that was simultaneously the U.S. Nemesis's brain and nervous system. Quantum resonance is destabilizing in the bioadaptive matrix. Chen's modified neural implants allowed him to manipulate holographic interfaces with mere thought patterns. Streams of data cascaded around him like living mathematics, each algorithm a potential solution to problems that had driven previous generations of scientists to madness. The Nemesis wasn't just a ship. It was humanity's evolutionary leap, a technological organism designed to survive where conventional systems would collapse. Dr. Sanvi Ranganathan, Chen's primary collaborator, approached with a data crystal that pulsed with an almost organic light. Her own body was a testament to human modification. Nanosynthetic skin that could self-repair, eyes that could perceive wavelengths far beyond normal human perception. The latest Kirathi communication intercepts are fascinating, she said, her voice clinical yet charged with an underlying excitement. Their quantum communication doesn't just transmit information, it propagates consciousness. Chen's modified cerebral cortex processed her words across multiple computational planes. The Kirathi weren't just using technology, they were technology. Their entire civilization was a living, breathing computational matrix that redefined the concept of intelligence. We're not just building a weapon, Chen muttered, more to himself than to Ranganathan. We're creating a new form of existence. The Quantum Forge hummed with potential. Experimental matter generators created materials that existed in multiple quantum states simultaneously. Walls shifted and breathed, adaptive systems that could reconfigure themselves faster than human perception could track. A containment breach alarm triggered, not from a conventional threat, but from the sheer computational complexity of their project. The U.S. Nemesis was pushing against the very fabric of physical reality. Quantum entanglement is exceeding predicted tolerances, Araya reported. Its voice was neither male nor female, neither machine nor human, a perfect representation of the liminal space they were exploring. Ranganathan's augmented vision tracked microscopic fluctuations that would be invisible to unmodified human perception. Nanoscale constructs danced and reconfigured, creating computational pathways that defied traditional understanding of circuitry and information transfer. We're essentially creating a living weapon that can think faster than entire civilizations, she observed. The statement hung in the air, part warning, part declaration of wonder. Chen understood the deeper implication. The Nemesis wasn't just about survival. It was about transcendence. Humanity's response to potential extinction wasn't just technological. It was an evolutionary statement, a declaration that they would not just survive, but fundamentally reshape the understanding of intelligent life. Fragments of captured Kirathi technology were integrated into the ship's core, not as conquered technology, but as a complex dialogue between two forms of intelligence. Each system was a negotiation, a careful balance between human innovation and alien complexity. Neural interface stability at 78%, Araya reported. potential consciousness transfer probability increasing. The implications were staggering. They weren't just building a ship that could think. They were creating a being that could potentially transfer human consciousness across quantum states, a form of existence that transcended physical limitations. A holographic representation of the Nemesis materialized, a design that was part spacecraft, part living organism, part mathematical probability. Its exterior could reshape itself instantaneously, adapting to threats before they could even be perceived. "We're ready for the first quantum consciousness integration," Ranganathan said, her voice a mix of scientific detachment and barely contained anticipation. Chen looked at the hologram. Humanity's last hope. Humanity's first step into a form of existence they had never imagined possible. "Initiate primary quantum resonance," he commanded. The quantum forge trembled. Reality itself seemed to pause, holding its breath. Silence was a weapon Captain Elena Rodriguez had mastered long before the Nemesis. The ship's approach was nothing like traditional naval tactics. Quantum camouflage wasn't just about invisibility. It was about existing in a state of probabilistic uncertainty. The Nemesis could simultaneously occupy multiple potential locations, its quantum signature so complex that standard detection methods became meaningless. Lieutenant Kai Nakamura monitored the ship's external sensor arrays, a task that required more than human perception. Neurological enhancement patches covered the back of his neck, allowing him to process quantum-level information streams that would have driven an unmodified human mind into instant fracture. "Sigma Draconis cluster approaching," he reported. "Probability matrices are unexpected." Rodriguez understood that unexpected in their current context meant something far more profound than a simple tactical anomaly. The Nemesis was pushing against the fundamental laws of spatial navigation. Each moment of their approach was a negotiation with reality itself. Araria, the ship's sentient AI, projected holographic data streams that looked more like living art than traditional navigational information. Fractal patterns of potential movement danced around Rodriguez, each representing millions of possible engagement scenarios calculated in femtosecons. "The Kurathi fleet configuration is non-standard," Araria observed. Its voice carried a subtle undertone that was almost, but not quite, concern. "Previous predictive models are no longer applicable." Dr. Sanvi Ranganathan, who had remained aboard as the primary quantum systems engineer, studied the emerging data with a predator's intensity. Her augmented eyes flickered, processing information at rates that made human perception look like slow motion. "They're running," she said suddenly. The statement hung in the air, unexpected, and charged with implications. Rodriguez turned, her cybernetic eye casting a momentary holographic overlay across the bridge. "Running? From what?" Ranganathan's response was a cascade of quantum probability projections that materialized around them. Star systems flickered and died, entire galactic sectors represented as complex mathematical interactions. Something was moving between the spaces of known reality. A threat so profound that even the Kurathi, with their millennia of technological superiority, were executing the strategic retreat. "Not just running," Ranganathan clarified. "Hurting." The implications were terrifying. The Kurathi weren't just fleeing. They were strategically positioning other civilizations, including humanity, as potential buffer zones against something far more dangerous. Lieutenant Nakamura's neural interfaces suddenly went into overdrive. Quantum echoes detected. Something is watching. The ship's adaptive hull began to reconfigure spontaneously. Metamaterials shifted and breathed, creating defensive configurations that anticipated threats before they could even manifest. The Nemesis was becoming more than a vessel. It was transforming into a living defensive matrix. Rodriguez understood they were no longer conducting a simple military operation. This was first contact with a cosmic-level threat that defied conventional understanding. "RIA," she commanded, "analyze the quantum resonance patterns. Find the anomaly." The ship's AI processed more information in a microsecond than entire human civilizations had processed in centuries. Holographic representations exploded around them. Multidimensional maps that showed not just spatial locations, but potential interactions across multiple probability streams. A pattern emerged. Subtle. Almost imperceptible. Something was moving between the quantum spaces. Something that consumed entire civilizations not through traditional warfare, but by fundamentally altering the mathematical probability of their existence. "We're bait," Rodriguez realized. The statement was both tactical observation and existential revelation. Ranganathan's augmented systems confirmed the hypothesis. The Kurathi fleet configurations, their seemingly random movements, the specific approach vectors, everything suggested a carefully orchestrated plan to draw out something lurking in the cosmic shadows. "Quantum camouflage at maximum efficiency," Nakamura reported. "We are simultaneously everywhere and nowhere." The Nemesis continued its approach, a technological ghost moving through the complex mathematical landscape of potential space. Each moment was a negotiation, each movement a complex dance of probability and intent. Something was watching. Something was waiting, and humanity was about to make first contact with a threat that existed beyond the boundaries of known reality. The moment of contact was not an explosion. It was a symphony of quantum dissolution. Commander Elrix of the Kurathi battle group felt the first tremor not through conventional sensors, but through the genetic memory woven into every cell of their being. Something was fundamentally wrong with the fabric of space itself. Tactical screens erupted in cascading fractal patterns, not glitches, but living mathematical representations of a threat that defied comprehension. The U.S. Nemesis didn't simply appear, it manifested, a process more akin to a mathematical proof becoming suddenly, violently real. Lieutenant Kai Nakamura's neural interfaces sang with a complex melody of tactical information. First-stage quantum disruption initiated, he reported, his voice calm despite the cosmic violence unfolding around them. The initial attack was almost gentle in its precision. Quantum entanglement weapons began to unmake the Kurathi ships at their most fundamental level. Molecular bonds dissolved. Quantum states became probability clouds. Entire vessels transformed from solid matter into complex mathematical potentials that existed simultaneously everywhere and nowhere. Dr. Sanvi Ranganathan watched from the Nemesis observation deck, her augmented vision capturing details that would drive an unmodified human mind to madness. The battle wasn't about destruction. It was about rewriting the very rules of physical existence. "They're not dying," she murmured. "They're being deconstructed." Captain Elena Rodriguez understood the deeper strategy. This wasn't merely combat. It was a language, a conversation conducted in the most fundamental dialect of the universe. Pure information. Araya, the ship's sentient intelligence, spoke not in words but in complex quantum algorithms that transformed the entire engagement into a living, breathing mathematical argument. Each weapon system was a sentence. Each defensive maneuver a grammatical construction that rewrote the laws of physics. On the bridge of the Lid Kurathi worldship, Commander Elrix experienced something unprecedented. Their collective consciousness, a network that had conquered thousands of civilizations, began to fragment. Not through violence, but through a form of informational metamorphosis. The Nemesis wasn't just attacking. It was communicating. Quantum resonance weapons didn't simply destroy. They unraveled the very conceptual integrity of Kurathi technology. Entire battle groups found themselves transformed into complex probability waves, existing in a state between matter and pure potential. Genetic memory archives are destabilizing, a Kurathi neural network reported. The statement was both tactical assessment and existential crisis. Nakamura's neural interfaces reached a state of pure computational ecstasy. He was no longer observing the battle. He was part of its mathematical landscape. Each tactical decision became a living equation, each defensive maneuver a complex algorithmic dance. Quantum deconstruction at 37% efficiency, Araya reported. The percentage meant nothing. and everything. Captain Rodriguez understood they were conducting more than warfare. This was first contact of the most fundamental kind, a dialogue written in the language of fundamental physics. The Karathi world ships began to transform, not destroyed, not conquered. Something far more profound was occurring. Their incredibly advanced technology became a fluid medium, information becoming pure potential, matter dissolving into complex mathematical constructions. Dr. Ranganathan's augmented systems captured something extraordinary. The Nemesis wasn't just defeating the Karathi. It was studying them, learning, evolving. We're communicating, she realized. Not with weapons, with information. Commander Elrix experienced the dissolution not as destruction, but as a form of transcendent understanding. The Nemesis was revealing something about the nature of existence that the Karathi had never comprehended, a fundamental truth about the universe that existed beyond technological superiority. One by one, Karathi battle groups transformed, not eliminated. Transformed. Aria's quantum communication reached a crescendo. A complex mathematical symphony that was simultaneously a weapon, a message, and a new form of existence. The battle lasted 17 minutes. 17 minutes that would redefine the understanding of warfare, technology, and the very nature of communication across cosmic distances. When it ended, nothing remained as it had been before. Not the Karathi fleet, not human technology. Not the fundamental understanding of reality itself. The silence was louder than any weapon. In the aftermath of the engagement, communication became a battlefield more complex than any physical confrontation. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the Nemesis's chief xenopsychological analyst, understood that true warfare happened in the spaces between thought, in the quantum realms of perception and understanding. Her neural interface hummed with captured Karathi communication fragments, not radio signals, but living streams of consciousness that defied traditional linguistic interpretation. Each fragment was a universe of meaning, a complex tapestry of memory, intention, and existential terror. They're not just communicating, Vasquez muttered to herself. They're unlearning. The psychological warfare was multilayered. Araya had discovered something far more profound than simple tactical disruption. The Nemesis's quantum communication systems were performing a kind of informational acupuncture, targeting the most fundamental neural pathways of the Karathi collective consciousness. Lieutenant Kai Nakamura monitored the psychological impact. His augmented systems could track the most minute changes in quantum information streams, watching as entire civilizational memories began to fragment and reassemble. Captain Rodriguez understood this was beyond traditional combat. They were performing cognitive surgery on an entire species. Fragmentary reports began to filter in from various intercepted Karathi communication nodes. Entire battle groups were experiencing collective identity crisis. Warrior formations that had existed for millennia suddenly found themselves questioning fundamental aspects of their existence. Collective memory integrity at 22%, Araya reported. The percentage was both a tactical assessment and an existential revelation. Dr. Sanvi Ranganathan approached with a holographic representation that looked more like a living, breathing organism than a traditional data display. Quantum entanglement patterns danced around her, showing the complex psychological deconstruction happening across multiple star systems. We're not just defeating them, she explained. We're forcing an entire species to reimagine its fundamental understanding of existence. The Karathi had always been more than a military civilization. They were a living, breathing computational matrix, a species where individual identity was constantly negotiated through collective consciousness. The Nemesis attack was performing a kind of surgical reset, forcing them to rebuild their entire conceptual framework. Intercepted communication streams revealed something unexpected. Fear, not the traditional fear of destruction, but a more profound existential terror. They had been running from something that made their own technological superiority look like primitive child's play. And now, that something was getting closer. Commander Elrix, or what remained of their collective consciousness, began to emerge in the quantum communication streams, not as a unified entity, but as a fragmented series of potential identities. Each communication was a negotiation, a complex dance of memory and potential. We are not what we were, one fragment transmitted. We are becoming something else. Vasquez recognized this as a critical moment. This wasn't surrender. This was transformation. The psychological warfare had multiple layers. The Nemesis wasn't just attacking the Karathi. It was offering them a choice: evolve or disintegrate, adapt or cease to exist as a coherent civilization. Nakamura's neural interfaces captured something extraordinary. The Karathi weren't just losing their identity, they were being given the opportunity to rebuild it from fundamental quantum principles. Collective memory reconstruction protocols, initiating, Araya reported. The statement carried a subtle undertone that was almost, but not quite, compassion. Captain Rodriguez watched the holographic displays, understanding they were witnessing something unprecedented in galactic history, an entire species being fundamentally reimagined through pure information warfare. The most terrifying part wasn't the destruction, it was the potential. Because somewhere in the quantum spaces between thought and reality, something was watching. Something that had been the true reason behind the Karathi's millennia-long expansion. And now, that something was about to take notice of humanity. Prepare secondary quantum communication protocols, Rodriguez commanded. We're just getting started. The last stand of the Karathi was not a battle. It was a philosophical revolt. Grand Architect Zelnax materialized as a quantum projection, no longer a singular being, but a complex network of potential consciousness. The remnants of the Karathi fleet gathered not in traditional military formation, but in a living, breathing mathematical construct that defied conventional understanding of space and time. We are the memory of a civilization, Zelnax transmitted. The message was simultaneously a weapon, a plea, and a final declaration of existence. Captain Elena Rodriguez understood they were witnessing something far beyond a traditional military engagement. The Nemesis quantum systems had transformed the very concept of conflict into a dialogue of fundamental existence. Dr. Sanvi Ranganathan's augmented vision tracked the complex quantum interactions. The Karathi weren't preparing to fight. They were preparing to transmute. Incoming quantum cascade, Lieutenant Kai Nakamura reported. His neural interfaces vibrated with the intensity of incoming information streams. They're attempting a collective consciousness transfer. The space around the Nemesis began to ripple, not with traditional energy weapons or particle streams, but with living mathematical constructs that threatened to rewrite the fundamental laws of physics. Araya, the ship's sentient intelligence, responded not with traditional defensive protocols, but with a quantum communication matrix that was part weapon, part translation algorithm. Each defensive measure was a complex linguistic argument, a mathematical proof that challenged the very foundations of the Karathi's existential understanding. Zelnax's quantum projection began to fragment and reassemble. Millions of potential identities collided and merged, a civilization experiencing its own death and rebirth simultaneously. We are the warning, another fragment transmitted. Something approaches that will consume everything. Rodriguez felt a chill that had nothing to do with temperature. The Karathi weren't just fighting. They were trying to communicate a threat so profound that traditional communication was impossible. The battlefield transformed. Space itself became a living computational medium. Entire star systems became potential weapons. Quantum entanglement created defensive matrices that existed in multiple states simultaneously. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's psychological analyst, tracked the psychological dimensions of the conflict. This was more than warfare. It was a fundamental negotiation of existence. They're trying to warn us, she realized, about something beyond our comprehension. Nakamura's neural interfaces reached a state of pure informational ecstasy. The conflict had transcended traditional military engagement. Each tactical decision was a complex algorithmic dance, a negotiation written in the language of fundamental physics. The Karathi fleet began to transform, not destroyed, not conquered, but becoming something else entirely. Massive quantum cascades erupted around the Nemesis. Star systems flickered. Entire sectors of space became potential energy, mathematical constructs that existed between reality and pure possibility. Collective consciousness transfer at 67%, Araya reported. The percentage meant nothing and everything. Zelmax's final transmission was a complex quantum message that would take centuries to fully decode. The Void Dancer's approach. We were not your enemy. We were the first line of defense. Rodriguez understood the deeper implication. The Kurathi's millennia-long expansion wasn't conquest. It was a desperate attempt to create a buffer against something far more terrifying. The last Karathi worldships began to dissolve, not into destruction, but into pure potential. Entire civilizational memories transformed into quantum information streams that merged with the fabric of space itself. Quantum deconstruction complete, Nakamura reported. But something was wrong. The spaces between the dissolved Karathi fleet began to move, not with traditional motion, but with a kind of fundamental wrongness that suggested something was pushing against the very fabric of reality. Something was watching. Something was approaching. And humanity had just removed the only civilization that had been holding it back. Silence became the most terrifying sound in the universe. The remnant council chamber on Mars felt like a mausoleum of human potential. Holographic displays showed the aftermath of the Karathi engagement. Star systems that now existed in states of quantum uncertainty, entire sectors of space, rewritten into complex mathematical landscapes. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood before the assembled leadership, her cybernetic eye casting intricate data projections that danced around her like living shadows. The Nemesis wasn't just a weapon anymore. It was humanity's evolutionary bridge. We've removed the only civilization that was holding something back, she reported. The statement hung in the air, part warning, part existential revelation. Dr. Sanvi Ranganathan's latest analysis materialized, a holographic representation that looked more like a living organism than a traditional data readout. Quantum anomalies were spreading, not like a virus, like a fundamental reimagining of spatial reality. The lead counselor, Marcus Edenauer, looked older than his chronological age. Decades of human survival had etched lines of survival into his face. What did the Karathi mean by void dancers? Rodriguez's response was clinical. We don't know, yet. Lieutenant Kai Nakamura's neural interfaces began to pulse with an intensity that suggested something was fundamentally wrong with the fabric of reality itself. Quantum communication streams were fragmenting, not breaking down, but becoming something else entirely. Araya, the ship's sentient intelligence, began to correlate data from multiple dimensions, not theoretical dimensions, real, measurable spaces that existed between what humans understood as reality. Probability matrices are destabilizing, Araya reported. The statement carried an undertone that was almost, but not quite, concern. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the ship's synapsychological analyst, understood they were witnessing something unprecedented. The Karathi weren't just a military civilization. They had been a living computational barrier, a species that had been holding back something that defied fundamental understanding. Scattered reports came in from deep space observation posts. Entire star systems were experiencing quantum anomalies. Space itself seemed to be breathing. We've removed the firewall, Ranganathan muttered. The scientific term felt inadequate for the cosmic implications. The Nemesis itself was changing. No longer just a weapon or a ship, it was becoming something else. A living mathematical construct that existed between potential states of reality. Nakamura's neural interfaces captured something extraordinary. The spaces between star systems were no longer empty. They were alive with a kind of fundamental movement that suggested intelligence far beyond human comprehension. Incoming quantum cascade, he reported. But this was different. This wasn't a weapon. This was a communication. Rodriguez understood they were about to make first contact with something that made the Karathi look like children playing at civilization. Araya began to translate the incoming quantum streams, not with language, with pure mathematical potential. Fragments of understanding emerged. Void dancers were not a species. They were a process, a fundamental reorganization of reality itself. They consumed civilizations not through traditional warfare, but by fundamentally altering the mathematical probability of their existence. The Karathi hadn't been conquering galaxies. They had been building a cosmic immune system, and humanity had just removed the last line of defense. Ranganathan's quantum analysis showed something terrifying. The Void Dancers didn't just consume civilizations. They rewrote the fundamental rules of existence. Entire species became computational resources. Entire star systems transformed into living computational matrices. We're not preparing for a war, Rodriguez realized. We're preparing for a fundamental reimagining of what existence means. The Nemesis began to pulse, not with traditional energy, but with a kind of fundamental potential that suggested it was becoming something more than a ship, more than a weapon, a bridge between what humanity was and what humanity could become. The first quantum tendrils of the Void Dancers began to touch the edges of human-controlled space. Something was approaching, and humanity was about to discover whether they were truly ready to survive.